"Don't just look, rancher. Something bit me between my legs. Suck out the venom before it spreads." The sun hung low over the valley, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, as if the world itself were preparing for a quiet night. The rancher, a man who had lived alone for many years, walked along the worn dirt path that bordered his property. The ranch had been in his family for generations, but over the years he had become accustomed to the solitude, the wide open spaces, the rustle of the wind through the tall grass, and the lowing of his cattle were his only companions. He liked it that way. Life on the ranch was simple, predictable, and honest. Every morning he rose with the sun, fed the animals, checked the fences, and maintained the land. Every evening he returned to his small cabin, cooked a quiet meal, and watched the sky change color until darkness settled over the valley. On this particular day, however, something felt different. He noticed the birds were unusually quiet, and the distant hills seemed to shimmer in a way that made him uneasy. He had always trusted his instincts, honed by years of living close to the land, and he knew when something was out of place. The wind was warm, carrying with it the scent of dry earth and wildflowers, yet it seemed to whisper a warning he could not fully understand. He shook his head, telling himself he was imagining things. After all, he had spent decades in this valley and knew it like the back of his hand. There was rarely cause for alarm. As he walked along the fence line, checking each post and wire for damage, he heard a faint sound that made him stop in his tracks. At first he thought it was just the wind playing tricks, but then he heard it again, a weak, panicked cry coming from the nearby woods. It was not a sound he had ever heard in these parts, not a natural sound of the wind or the animals. It was human. His heart quickened. The rancher paused, listening carefully. The cry came again, more desperate this time, and it seemed to be calling for help. He hesitated for a moment, scanning the thick brush that lined the edge of his property. The trees swayed gently, casting long shadows across the ground, but there was no sign of movement. His mind raced with possibilities. Was it an injured hiker? Perhaps a lost traveler? Or someone in danger? He knew he could not ignore it. Without thinking twice, he moved toward the sound, stepping carefully over rocks and fallen branches, his eyes straining to see through the dimming light. As he entered the woods, the cries became clearer, more urgent. He followed them until he came upon a small clearing. There he saw her. A young woman, no more than 25, was lying on the ground, her face pale and contorted with pain. She clutched her leg, trembling, and her eyes widened as she saw him approach. She tried to speak, but her voice came out in sharp gasps. The rancher knelt beside her, trying to remain calm despite the fear rising in his chest. He had seen injuries before, broken bones, deep cuts, but there was something different about this one. Her face was etched with panic, and she kept glancing at her leg in a way that made his stomach tighten. "What happened?" he asked gently, keeping his voice steady. She looked at him, her eyes filling with tears. Something bit me," she whispered. "I think it's venomous. It hurts so much." Her words were shaky, but there was a clarity in them that made him understand the seriousness of the situation immediately. He looked at the small puncture mark near her inner thigh and felt a chill run down his spine. He knew enough about the wild creatures in this area to realize that she might not have much time if the venom spread. He quickly assessed the situation. The woman was in shock, her breathing rapid and uneven. The sun was setting, and night would soon make it difficult to navigate the forest. He realized he had to act fast. "Stay calm," he said firmly. "You're going to be okay." "I'm going to help you." She shook her head weakly. I don't think so, please. Her words faltered, and then she gasped, her face contorting in pain. Don't just look. Don't just look. Something bit me between my legs. Suck out the venom before it spreads. The rancher froze. The request was shocking, and a wave of hesitation hit him. It was one thing to deal with an injury, another entirely to confront such a personal and frightening wound. But he could see the fear in her eyes, the desperation that made her cling to hope. He knew that hesitation could cost her life. Taking a deep breath, he reminded himself that this was not about him. It was about saving a life. He grabbed a clean cloth from his pack, trying to prepare himself as best as he could. I'm going to help you, he said, his voice calm and steady. I need you to stay still and trust me. She nodded weakly, biting her lip to keep from crying out. Every movement she made caused her pain, and he could see the venom beginning to take hold, the swelling, the pallor of her skin, the tremor in her hands. As he worked, he kept talking to her, offering reassurance. You're strong. You're going to get through this. Just a little longer. His words were simple, but they carried a weight of certainty, a promise that he would not let her die alone in the forest. The world around them, the trees, the fading sunlight, the chirping crickets, seemed to fade away. In that moment, it was just the two of them, and the life and death struggle unfolding between them. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. The rancher focused entirely on the task, careful to follow her instructions as best as he could. The fear and disgust he felt were real, but they were secondary to the life in front of him. She squeezed his arm tightly, murmuring small, grateful phrases between gasps of pain. For both of them, the world had narrowed to a single point: the fight against the venom, the battle to survive. Finally, after what felt like endless minutes, the rancher managed to extract the venom, carefully cleaning the wound and doing everything he could to prevent further harm. The woman's breathing began to steady, and the tension in her body slowly lessened. She looked up at him, eyes filled with a mixture of relief, gratitude, and awe. Words were unnecessary. They both understood the gravity of what had just happened. The sun had almost disappeared behind the horizon by the time they'd made their way out of the woods. The rancher supported her as best he could, guiding her back to the safety of his cabin. Every step was careful, every movement measured, as they navigated the uneven terrain. Though they had only just met, a silent trust had formed between them, born of fear, courage, and the instinct to survive. By the time they reached the ranch house, the night had fully settled in. The stars twinkled above, indifferent witnesses to the small miracle that had occurred in the quiet valley. The woman was exhausted but alive, and the rancher felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. He had acted what it mattered most, risking his comfort and composure to save another human being. In that moment, the loneliness of the ranch felt less oppressive, replaced by a connection forged in the heat of crisis. As he helped her inside and offered her a blanket and warm water, he realized that life was unpredictable. It could be harsh and unforgiving, yet it also offered moments of extraordinary courage and unexpected trust. That evening, the rancher sat by the fire, reflecting on the day's events. He had saved a life, yes, but he had also been reminded of the fragility and resilience of humans, their capacity to endure pain, to trust, and to survive against the odds. And somewhere in the darkness outside the cabin, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint promise of another day, another chance, and the knowledge that even in the quietest corners of the world, extraordinary things could happen. The woman lay on the couch in the small cabin, wrapped in a warm blanket that the rancher had quickly fetched. Her breathing was still shallow, her body trembling from both pain and shock. The rancher moved quietly around the cabin, lighting a small lantern that cast a soft golden glow across the room. The shadows danced on the wooden walls, but inside, the cabin felt safe, removed from the dangers of the outside world. The young woman tried to sit up, but a sharp wince of pain made her lean back against the cushions. She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. I don't even know what bit me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was hiking alone, and I must have disturbed it. I didn't even hear it coming." The rancher nodded, keeping his voice calm and steady. "It's all right. You're safe now. That's what matters." He could see the fear in her eyes, the remnants of the terror she had felt in the woods. Her hands trembled as she held the blanket close, and he realized how close she had come to a very real danger. Her gaze fell on the spot where she had been bitten, and she flinched as if remembering the pain. I thought I was going to die," she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "I didn't know who to call. And then I saw you. You saved me." The rancher shrugged modestly, trying to brush off the gratitude. "I just did what anyone would do. You were in trouble, and I helped. That's all." But she shook her head, her eyes shining with something he couldn't ignore. "No, not anyone would do that. You didn't hesitate, even when it was." Her voice faltered and she looked away, her cheeks flushing. He understood what she meant, without her finishing the sentence. It was a situation that most people would recoil from, yet he had faced it calmly, with only one goal: to save her life. The rancher sat down in a chair nearby, studying her carefully.
"You're going to need rest," he said. "Your body went through a lot."
The venom? It can be dangerous, even after it's removed.
"We'll need to watch for swelling, fever, or any other symptoms. Do you have anyone I can call?"
Family, friends? She shook her head slowly. "No, I'm alone. I left my home to hike for a few days, to clear my mind. I didn't expect any of this." Her voice carried a mixture of regret and disbelief. She had set out on an adventure, seeking solitude, and yet she had ended up in a life-threatening situation in the middle of the forest. The rancher nodded, understanding the irony. Life had a way of throwing unexpected challenges at people, and sometimes it took a stranger to pull them through. "Well, you're not alone anymore," he said gently. "You're safe here." "We'll make sure of that." For a moment, she didn't speak, simply staring at the fire that crackled softly in the hearth. The warmth and light seemed to reach into her frozen fear, offering comfort in a world that had moments ago been so threatening. She let out a long, shaky breath and said, "I can't believe how fast things happened. 1 second I was fine, and the next, I was lying there thinking I wouldn't make it." The rancher leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "That's why it's important to stay calm in emergencies," he said. "Panic makes everything worse. You did the right thing by calling for help, even if it was just shouting into the woods. And I happened to be here." Timing, it can make all the difference. She smiled faintly, a little of the tension leaving her face. Timing. Yes, I guess I was lucky. "You weren't just lucky," he corrected gently. "You survived because you acted. You didn't give up."
"You asked for help. That takes courage."
For the first time, she seemed to relax, her shoulders lowering as she leaned back into the cushions. She looked around the cabin, taking in the simple, rustic furnishings, the warmth of the fire, and the steady presence of the rancher. I never thought I'd be in a cabin like this, she said softly. I mean, not like this. Alone with someone helping me. I didn't even know what to expect. The rancher smiled faintly. Most people don't. Life doesn't prepare you for moments like this. You just deal with them as they come. Right now, the important thing is rest. Your body needs time to recover. She nodded, though her eyes lingered on him, as if trying to read something beyond words. She wanted to say more, but didn't know how. There was a strange mixture of relief, gratitude, and embarrassment in her expression, emotions that only grew stronger as the reality of her situation sank in. The rancher decided to give her some space, moving to fetch water and a small first aid kit from the cupboard. He returned quietly, placing a glass of water on the small table beside her, and opening the kit to make sure he had everything ready in case she needed it again. The young woman watched him, her eyes softening.
You really know what you're doing, she said. I mean,
You're calm and you seem prepared for anything, he chuckled lightly. I've been living out here for a long time. You learn to be prepared. You also learn to stay calm when it matters most. Fear doesn't help anyone, but action does. She sipped the water carefully, wincing slightly at the effort. Action, she repeated quietly. Yes, that's what saved me. Not luck, not chance, just someone taking action when it counted. The rancher nodded. Exactly. And now we'll keep taking action until you're fully healed. I'll make sure of that. Over the next few hours, they talked quietly, sharing small details about their lives. She told him about her love for hiking, her desire to escape the noise of the city, and her wish to find some peace in the wilderness. He shared stories about the ranch, the challenges of living alone, and the routines that had become his life over the years. Their conversation was careful, cautious, yet there was a growing sense of connection between them. The shared experience of danger and survival had created an unspoken bond. As the night deepened, the young woman grew drowsy. The rancher helped her adjust her blanket and made sure she was comfortable before sitting nearby in the soft glow of the lantern. He kept watch, listening to the quiet of the night, alert for any signs of trouble. The forest outside was still, the sounds of the wind and the distant calls of nocturnal animals creating a peaceful backdrop. In the quiet hours, the woman drifted into a light sleep, her breathing steadying. The rancher remained vigilant, aware that recovery was a slow process and that vigilance could prevent a relapse or complication. He thought about how fragile life could be, how quickly it could change, and how small acts of courage could make the difference between life and death. By the time the first hints of dawn touched the sky, the woman was awake again, looking more alert and slightly stronger. The rancher offered her a simple breakfast, and she accepted, eating slowly as her body regained energy. Their conversation returned, this time with lighter tones, punctuated by small smiles and quiet laughter. The tension of the previous day had begun to ease, replaced by a cautious optimism. Through it all, a sense of gratitude remained, unspoken but powerful. The young woman knew she had been given a second chance, and the rancher understood the weight of the responsibility he had carried. It was a moment that neither would forget, a life saved through courage, quick thinking, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. As the morning sun rose higher, casting golden light across the cabin and the surrounding fields, the rancher and the young woman stepped outside for the first time since the bite. The air was crisp and fresh, filled with the promise of a new day. She looked around, taking in the open fields, the distant mountains, and the quiet beauty of the valley. I can't believe this place exists, she said softly. It's peaceful, and it saved me. The rancher smiled. The world has quiet corners like this. Sometimes they find you when you need them most. And in that moment, the young woman realized that her life had changed in ways she could not yet understand. She had come seeking solitude and adventure, but she had found something else entirely: a chance to survive, a bond with a stranger, and a story of courage that would remain with her forever. The woman sat quietly by the window, staring out at the rolling fields that stretched beyond the ranch. Her body was still recovering, but her mind was restless. She could feel the lingering pain in her leg, a sharp reminder of the bite that had nearly taken her life. Every movement reminded her how close she had come to disaster. The rancher moved around the cabin, tending to chores, but he kept an eye on her, always ready to step in if she needed help. The cabin was quiet except for the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards and the gentle crackle of the fire in the hearth. She shifted uncomfortably, wincing slightly, and the rancher immediately noticed. "Careful," he said softly, approaching her. "You need to let it heal. Don't push yourself too soon." "I know," she whispered, "but I can't stop thinking about what happened. I keep replaying it in my head. How fast it all went wrong. One moment I was hiking, enjoying the forest, and the next I was lying on the ground, in pain, thinking I wouldn't make it." The rancher nodded, understanding the fear she was reliving. "It's natural," he said. "Your body and mind are processing the shock. Near-death experiences leave a mark. But the important thing is that you survived. You're here. You're alive." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly. "I never expected anyone to come," she admitted. "I was so alone, and the pain, it was unbearable. I thought I was done for."
"You were brave," the rancher said firmly. "You didn't give up."
Even when it hurt, even when fear took over, you kept calling for help. That's what made the difference. For a moment, she just looked at him, the weight of gratitude and relief evident in her eyes. She wanted to say more, but the words were hard to find. The experience had been so intense, so frightening, that talking about it felt almost impossible. But she needed to express herself, to acknowledge the man who had saved her life. I don't know how to thank you," she said finally. "You risked so much, and you didn't even hesitate. I can't imagine what it would have been like if you hadn't been there." The rancher shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. I was in the right place at the right time, and I did what needed to be done, that's all." She let out a shaky laugh, a mixture of relief and disbelief. Right place at the right time. I guess that's lucky. But it feels like more than luck. You acted.
You saved me. He nodded.
Action matters more than luck in situations like this. You acted too by asking for help. Courage comes in many forms, and sometimes it comes from the people we least expect. The woman looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "I keep thinking about how fragile life is," she said softly. "One moment, everything is normal, and the next, it can all change in an instant." "That's true," the rancher agreed. "Life can be unpredictable, but it's also precious. Moments like this remind us of that. They show us the value of human connection, the importance of being there for each other when it matters most." She nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The fear and pain she had experienced had created a bond between them, one that could not be broken by time or distance. In the face of danger, they had relied on each other, trusted each other, and survived together. As the day progressed, the rancher continued to care for her, helping her move carefully, checking her wound, and ensuring she stayed hydrated and nourished. Every small gesture of care, every word of encouragement, reinforced the sense of safety she felt in his presence. Slowly, she began to relax, the tension in her body easing as she realized that she was truly out of immediate danger. Yet, despite the physical recovery, the emotional struggle remained. She found herself haunted by the memory of the bite, the pain, and the fear. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see the venom, the sharp teeth, and the helplessness she had felt lying on the forest floor. She shivered involuntarily, and the rancher, noticing her distress, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder.
"You're okay," he said softly. "You made it through."
"You're alive, and you're safe here. The rest will pass with time." "I know," she replied, her voice trembling. "But it's hard to stop thinking about it. I keep imagining what could have happened if—" Her voice trailed off, the words too heavy to finish. He squeezed her shoulder gently. "Don't dwell on it. What matters is now."
You're healing, and you're alive. Focus on that.
Focus on the things you can control, not the things you can't. She took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. Slowly, she began to feel a sense of calm returning. The rancher had been a constant presence, steady and reliable, guiding her through the aftermath of a terrifying event. His calm demeanor and practical approach had helped her regain a sense of control over her own body and mind. As the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, the rancher suggested they go outside for a short walk. She hesitated, worried about her strength and the pain in her leg, but he encouraged her gently. "Just a little walk," he said. "The fresh air will do you good. You don't have to go far." Reluctantly, she agreed, leaning on his arm for support as they stepped outside. The warm glow of the setting sun bathed the fields in gold, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of grass and wildflowers. For the first time since the bite, she felt a sense of normalcy returning. The world was still beautiful, still full of life, despite the danger she had faced. They walked slowly across the property, talking quietly about small, everyday things, the weather, the animals, the land. The simplicity of the conversation was comforting, a reminder that life continued even after moments of crisis. The rancher pointed out the different plants and animals, sharing his knowledge of the land, and she listened attentively, grateful for the distraction and the sense of connection it brought. As the sun disappeared behind the distant hills, they returned to the cabin. The woman felt exhausted but lighter, as if the walk had helped release some of the tension that had built up inside her. She sat by the fire, sipping a warm cup of tea that the rancher had prepared, feeling a sense of gratitude she could not fully express in words. "You've done so much for me," she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "I don't even know how to repay you."
"You don't need to repay me," he replied. "Just take care of yourself.
Live your life, and remember what happened here. That's enough." She nodded, understanding that the experience had already left a lasting impact. It had changed her, made her more aware of her own strength, and reminded her of the kindness and courage that people were capable of. The night settled over the ranch, quiet and calm. The stars twinkled above, and the wind rustled gently through the trees. Inside the cabin, the woman rested, her body finally beginning to feel lighter, her mind slowly finding peace. She had survived a terrifying ordeal, and she had done so with the help of a stranger who had shown courage, compassion, and unwavering calm in the face of danger. In the days that followed, the rancher continued to care for her, monitoring her recovery and offering support. She gradually regained strength, each day feeling a little more like herself. Their conversations grew lighter, filled with small jokes and shared observations, yet the bond formed in those critical hours remained strong. They had faced fear and danger together, and that connection would remain long after the bite had healed. Through it all, the woman learned something important, not just about survival, but about human nature. She realized that courage could come in many forms, sometimes from the most unexpected places. It was not just physical bravery, but the willingness to act what it mattered most, to face fear with determination and compassion. And in that small, quiet cabin in the valley, she had witnessed that courage firsthand. The rancher, too, felt a quiet satisfaction. He had faced a situation that would have caused many to hesitate, yet he had acted decisively and calmly. He had saved a life, and in doing so, had been reminded of the fragility and value of life itself. The experience strengthened his belief in the importance of action, courage, and compassion, and it left him with a sense of fulfillment he could not have imagined before that day. By the time the sun rose on the following morning, both of them felt a renewed sense of hope. The danger had passed, but the lessons remained. Lessons about trust, courage, and the power of human connection. And as they looked out over the fields, the wide open valley, and the endless sky, they knew that life, though fragile, was filled with moments of extraordinary meaning, moments that could change everything in an instant. The first light of dawn spilled through the cabin windows, soft and golden, and the woman stirred in her bed. She had slept deeply through the night, her body finally able to rest after the terrifying ordeal she had endured. The rancher was already awake, moving quietly around the cabin, tending to the small chores that kept the house in order. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of the fields and the distant mountains, and it filled the cabin with a sense of calm and possibility. A woman stretched slowly, wincing slightly as her muscles protested the movement. The bite in her leg still throbbed, but the worst of the pain had faded. She looked around the cabin, taking in the warm glow of the lanterns, the firewood stacked neatly by the hearth, and the quiet, steady presence of the rancher. She felt a mixture of gratitude, relief, and a lingering sense of awe. He had saved her life, guided her through her fear, and stayed calm when she had needed it most. "Good morning," he said, smiling softly as he noticed her waking. "How are you feeling?" She took a deep breath, trying to gauge her strength. "Better, much better," she replied. "The pain is still there, but it's fading. I can't believe I made it through. All of it." "You did," the rancher said firmly. "You survived. That's what matters. Your strength carried you through, even when it was hard to see a way out." She nodded, her eyes reflecting both exhaustion and gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there," she said softly. I
can't thank you enough."
He waved off her words.
"You don't need to thank me."
"Just take care of yourself. That's enough." For the next few hours, they moved carefully through the morning routine. The rancher helped her wash up and get dressed, making sure she took each step slowly to avoid putting too much strain on her leg. He prepared a simple breakfast of eggs, toast, and warm tea, which she ate with a cautious appetite. The act of eating, small as it seemed, felt like a victory, a return to normalcy after the terror of the previous day. Once breakfast was done, the rancher suggested they step outside for some fresh air. She hesitated at first, worried about her strength, but he encouraged her gently. "Just a short walk," he said. "The fresh air will do you good, and you need to stretch a little." With his arm supporting her carefully, she stepped out onto the porch. The valley stretched out before them, bathed in the soft light of morning. The fields shimmered with dew, and the distant mountains rose majestically against the sky. The beauty of the landscape seemed almost surreal after the fear she had experienced. She took a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill her lungs, and for the first time, she felt a sense of peace. "You were very brave yesterday," the rancher said quietly as they walked slowly along the edge of the fields. It would have been easy to panic, to give up. But you didn't. That courage saved your life. She looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. I didn't feel brave, she admitted. I was terrified. I thought I was done for. But I didn't give up. I kept calling for help. I kept trying to survive. Is that what you mean? He nodded. Yes, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's taking action, even when you're afraid. You did exactly that, and it made all the difference. As they walked, they noticed the small signs of life around the ranch, the cattle grazing quietly in the fields, birds hopping along the fence line, and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. The world seemed ordinary, yet extraordinary at the same time. To her, every detail felt sharper, brighter, more vivid. She had faced death and survived, and now the simple act of walking through the fields felt like a gift. After a short walk, they returned to the cabin. The rancher helped her settle back into a chair by the fire, where she sipped another cup of tea. The warmth of the fire, combined with the comfort of the cabin, made her feel safe in a way she hadn't in a long time. The rancher sat nearby, watching her carefully, ready to help if she needed anything. Over the next few days, he continued to monitor her recovery. He checked her wound regularly, ensuring it stayed clean and free of infection. He encouraged her to move gently, to stretch her leg and regain strength. But he was careful not to push her too far. Slowly, day by day, she grew stronger. Her fear began to fade, replaced by a cautious confidence in her own body and abilities. During this time, their conversations deepened. She shared more about her life, her dreams, and the reasons she had sought solitude in the forest. He shared stories about the ranch, his routines, and the lessons he had learned from years of living close to the land. They laughed quietly over small anecdotes, and she found herself enjoying his calm, steady presence. It was a friendship born out of crisis, yet it felt natural, genuine, and comforting. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, she attempted to walk a little further than before. The rancher supported her carefully, and though her leg ached slightly, she managed to move without pain. The sense of accomplishment was exhilarating. She had survived a life-threatening bite, and now she was reclaiming her strength, step by step. "You're doing wonderfully," he said, pride evident in his voice. "Look at you, stronger every day." She smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "You've been incredible, calm, patient, and, I don't know, steady. I never expected to meet someone like you in the middle of the forest." He chuckled softly. "I've seen enough to know how quickly things can go wrong. Staying calm and focused can save a life. And you made it easy to help. You trusted me when it mattered most. That's rare." Her eyes softened. "I will never forget what you did. Not just the physical help, but the way you stayed calm, the way you made me feel safe when everything was falling apart. That matters more than anything else." As the days passed, the woman regained her confidence. She learned to walk without assistance, though she moved carefully to avoid any strain on her leg. She explored the ranch with the rancher, helping with simple chores and observing the animals. Each day brought small victories, the ability to move freely, the return of her appetite, and the quiet joy of being alive. The rancher noticed the change too. She had gone from a frightened, weakened state to someone who was regaining her independence, her spirit lifting with every step. He felt a quiet pride in her recovery, a satisfaction that went beyond duty. Saving her life had been important, but witnessing her healing and growth was equally meaningful. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, painting the sky in deep shades of red and gold, they sat together on the porch, watching the valley stretch out before them. The world was peaceful, calm, and filled with possibility. The woman leaned back, taking in the beauty of the scene, and for the first time in days, she felt truly at ease. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity, "for everything. For saving me, for helping me heal, for being here." The rancher smiled, a gentle warmth in his eyes. "You don't need to thank me. Just live your life, remember what happened here, and carry the lessons with you. That's enough." She nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The experience had changed her life. She had survived something terrifying, forged a bond with a stranger, and discovered strength she didn't know she had. And while the memory of the bite would never fully fade, it had been replaced by something stronger: hope, courage, and the knowledge that she could face challenges and survive. The night settled over the ranch, quiet and calm. Stars twinkled above, the wind rustled gently through the trees, and inside the cabin, two people sat together in a moment of peace. The danger had passed, but the lessons remained. Lessons about trust, courage, and the power of human connection. And as they looked out over the fields, the valley, and the mountains, they knew that life, though fragile, was filled with moments of extraordinary meaning, moments that could change everything in an instant. The morning sun rose over the ranch, casting a warm golden light across the fields and the distant mountains. The woman sat on the porch, enjoying the quiet peace of the valley. Her leg had healed almost completely, and the pain that had haunted her for days was gone. Yet the memory of the bite and the terror she had felt lingered in her mind. It was a part of her now, a reminder of both how fragile life could be and how strong she was to have survived it. The rancher stepped out of the cabin carrying a small basket of fresh bread and fruit he had prepared for breakfast. He set it on the table beside her and smiled. "Good morning," he said. "Feeling strong enough for a little breakfast?" She smiled back, her eyes reflecting gratitude. "Yes," she said softly, "stronger every day." "Thanks to you," he shrugged modestly, brushing off her words. "I just helped when it was needed. You did all the hard work by surviving and keeping calm. That's what matters." She took a bite of bread and sipped the juice he had poured, feeling the nourishment revive her. The simple act of eating in the fresh morning air felt like a small victory, a symbol of life continuing after a terrifying ordeal. As she chewed, she reflected on everything that had happened over the past few days. The fear, the pain, the uncertainty, and she realized just how much she had changed.
"You know," she said after a moment, "I came here to find some peace, to escape the noise of the city."
"I didn't expect this. I didn't expect danger or pain or someone like you." The rancher chuckled lightly. "Life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes the challenges we face are what teach us the most, and sometimes the people we meet along the way change our lives in ways we never imagined." She looked at him, feeling the truth of his words. He had changed her life. Not only had he saved her from a dangerous bite, but he had shown her the strength of human kindness and courage. He had stayed calm when she was terrified, guided her when she was weak, and never wavered in his determination to help her. "I'll never forget you," she said quietly. "Not just what you did, but how you did it. How you stayed calm. How you made me feel safe, even when I thought I was done for." He nodded, a quiet smile on his face. "That's what people are capable of," he said. "When it matters most, we can be braver and stronger than we think. You experienced that firsthand, and now you know it's possible for anyone, including you."
For a while they sat together in silence, watching the sun climb higher in the sky.
The valley stretched endlessly before them, fields of green and gold glowing in the morning light. Birds sang softly in the trees, and a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves. It was a peaceful, almost magical moment, one that made her feel both grounded and uplifted at the same time. "I feel like I've learned something important," she said finally. "I've learned how quickly life can change, how fragile it is. And I've learned how important it is to trust people, to rely on others when you need help. I didn't expect to learn that here, in the middle of nowhere." The rancher nodded, his eyes thoughtful. Life has a way of teaching lessons in the most unexpected places. Sometimes we don't even realize we're learning until much later. What matters is that we carry those lessons forward and that we remember the courage and kindness that saved us. She smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She had faced a terrifying ordeal, and now she had survived. More than that, she had discovered strength within herself, and she had experienced the power of trust and human connection. The rancher had been there for her in a way she would never forget, and the bond they had formed would stay with her forever. Over the next few days, she continued to regain her independence. She walked freely around the ranch, helped with small chores, and even rode a horse for the first time since her recovery. The rancher guided her carefully, offering gentle instructions and encouragement, but he let her take the lead. She felt a growing confidence, a reminder that she was no longer fragile or helpless. She had survived danger and pain, and now she could reclaim her life fully. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, they sat together on the porch once more. The air was warm, filled with the scents of grass and wildflowers, and the valley was quiet, peaceful, and calm. She turned to him, her eyes serious yet soft. "I wish I could stay here forever," she said quietly. "Not just because you helped me, but because this place feels alive in a way I've never felt before. And because you're different from anyone I've ever met. You showed me what courage looks like, what kindness looks like." The rancher smiled, a warmth in his eyes. "Life is full of paths we don't expect. You came here seeking solitude, and you found something else instead. That's how life works sometimes. It gives us what we need, even if it's not what we asked for." She nodded, taking in his words. "I know, and I'm grateful, more than I can say. You didn't just save my life, you gave me a story I'll carry forever. You showed me what humans are capable of, when it really matters." He placed a hand gently on hers, a quiet gesture of reassurance and connection. "And you showed me too," he said softly. "You showed me the strength of the human spirit. You survived. You trusted. You fought through fear. That courage, it's inspiring." They sat in silence for a while, letting the moment linger. The stars began to appear one by one in the sky, twinkling above the valley like tiny beacons of hope. The world was vast and quiet, yet in that small corner of it, two lives had intersected in a way that would never be forgotten. Eventually, the time came for her to leave the ranch. She had recovered fully. Her strength returned, and it was time to continue her journey. Though she felt a twinge of sadness, she also felt hope, knowing that the lessons and memories of her time here would remain with her always. On her final morning, she packed her things and took one last walk through the fields. The rancher followed quietly, offering support if she needed it. She paused to take in the view. The rolling hills, the grazing cattle, the distant mountains bathed in sunlight, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "For everything, for saving me, for helping me heal, for being here when I needed you most." "I will never forget this." The rancher smiled, his eyes reflecting the same gratitude. "Just live your life, and remember the lessons you've learned. That's all I ask. Carry the courage and kindness forward, and you'll honor the moment we shared." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I will. I promise." With a final embrace, she left the ranch, walking toward the path that led back to the world she had left behind. As she moved through the valley, she felt a renewed sense of strength, hope, and determination. She had survived, grown, and learned, and she carried with her the memory of a man who had shown her the true power of courage, kindness, and trust. Back at the ranch, the rancher watched her disappear into the distance. The valley was quiet once more, yet he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had acted when it mattered most, saved a life, and forged a bond that would remain in both of their hearts forever. He returned to his cabin, to the routines and quiet of the ranch, but with a renewed appreciation for the fragility and beauty of life. Days turned into weeks, and life went on. Yet, whenever the woman remembered the valley, the cabin, and the man who had saved her, she felt a quiet warmth in her heart. She told the story only to herself and a few close friends, never exaggerating, never embellishing, simply remembering the truth of what had happened. And in that memory was the essence of everything she had learned: courage, kindness, trust, and the extraordinary ways people can make a difference in each other's lives. And so, life continued for both of them. She returned to her world, changed but stronger, with a story that would stay with her forever. The rancher remained on his land, quietly tending to his animals in the fields, yet carrying the memory of the young woman he had saved, a reminder that even in solitude, life could bring extraordinary moments, and even in fear, courage could shine. The valley remained as it always had, wide, open, and full of quiet beauty. But within it, a story of survival, trust, and human connection had been written, a story that neither of them would ever forget.